The biggest misconception is to have a fixed understanding of the opportunities and risks of AI. So the general narrative is here that AI is good for effectiveness and efficiency of tasks, but on the other hand, threatens transparency, accountability, and data protection. And I think if you go deeper into the openness of the technology and the ways people can actually steer it, it becomes clear that AI can kind of play out in very, very different ways as an emerging technology and also as a general purpose technology. And I think this opens up a whole lot of possibilities. So for example, AI can be a kind of data protection nightmare if you think about applications like social scoring. But on the other hand, it's also the source of many privacy, new ideas for privacy enhancing technologies. And so I think it's very good to appreciate this openness and not to be very driven by preconceived ways this technology is to be developed. I think AI ethicists have not been shocked by AI in the sense of that there are very new questions that kind of pose to them things they haven't thought before. So, for example, automated driving and the trolley dilemma is one of the oldest ethical questions, the plank of Carneades. But what I think is now really special is that ethicists have to think about implementation, have to think about how to include those high-level norms and principles into specific applications, how to communicate their knowledge and their findings effectively also into practice. And I think that's a wonderful area to think about how to turn principles into practice. To think about, well, should we really allow this specific application? How do we design technologies in the face of trade-offs, ethical trade-offs that there are on the ground, and who should decide about all these questions? So I think this practice layer adds a whole new set of ethical questions, and I'm really intrigued in the work of my colleagues who think about the application. Ethical frameworks should be developed by ethicists in the first place. They have to have these discussions and kind of figure out the alternatives on how to steer AI. But if we think about standards, if we think about normative guidance of actors in society, I think there are two more requirements. And the first is to protect vulnerable groups and people that actually don't have a voice. And this has been done traditionally by human rights, which could be conceived as an area of ethics, but also as an area of law, a practical area of law. And I think it's very, very important to give a voice to the people. And this leads to the second aspect, which is also the democratic legitimacy of these standards. So I think we need to find ways to grant democratic legitimacy, to grant also the consent of all those potentially affected, which could be through traditional avenues of, for example, lawmaking involving parliaments and the traditional ways of democracy. But I think it's also very, very important to look for participation and expert advice. So participation means to allow the broader public to weigh in because they are experts of their domains and can tell us a lot about how they perceive risks, but also the governance of these technologies. And obviously, there also needs an inroad for experts, ethicists, but also other experts to comment and to work on these standards in political processes. I think we as scholars, as scientists, have an obligation to communicate our knowledge and to bring our knowledge into these discussions, because it's now an important part for us not only to do research and to teach, but also to care for the societal discourse, especially when we talk about technologies. And I think it's very important to do this in an inclusive manner, meaning to be independent voices and also to represent the whole discourse. So not to say scholarship says this or science says this, but to be inclusive of the many different perspectives you can have, and to be independent. I think that's a big privilege, because we are not driven by motivations of other societal experts, be it economic factors or power factors, but we have our academic independence, and I think it's really important to uphold that and to be driven what we conceive, of course, in our conscience as to be the right and the good solution. From my perspective, to the extent that we drive AI to change us. So I think humans actively shape the development of artificial intelligence, and there's really a wide array of different futures at the table. So we could think about brain-computer interfaces, AI integrating into human beings, or about extending robotics, which is basically a name for slave, for slave. So AI could serve humans in that sense. And beyond that, there are many different imaginaries. I think the important thing is to understand that we actually drive this this development, and we make these choices. So I think in the end, AI will not change humanity, but amplify in a way how humanity deals with technology, and amplify our choices in that regard. And it will be a reflection of how we kind of develop society. To add to that, the way I conceive regulation, the liberty to innovate, is an important goal of regulation itself. So regulation, of course, restricts technological innovation in one regard, but it can also have the function to enhance it by creating interoperable standards, by giving security also to developers and to projects, because the standards for behavior are actually defined through regulations, and innovators know the standards they have to meet in order to have an acceptable solution for society. So I think smart regulation incorporates innovation as part of the goals, but it tries to steer it in a societal beneficial way. And here definitely there can be trade-offs, and I think this cannot be kind of decided on a general basis, but you would have to look at the specific areas of application and find a good way to balance freedom for innovation and also commercial freedom for the application with the societal values at stake. This is what happens, I think, in the debates around ethical frameworks, but also about legislation on how to find good governance for these situations that maximize both sets of values at the same time.